I thought the hardest thing about making a YouTube channel was gonna be like the inevitable editing in the future. Holy shit, do I hate this angle. Oh my god. I'm Graciela, but more formally, online, I'm Grapie Deltaco. I wrote down all of the questions to the Booktube Newbie tag on a pen and paper because I'm recording this on my phone. I also just feel a level of maturity that comes with a yellow notepad. More often than not, I can be found on Booktok, which is where I've been for the past 4 years. That's how I got into online reader spaces. That's where I started out as a book reviewer, and I'm still on there for sure. I've gathered an interesting corner on my piece of the internet on that app. But why I've decided to join Booktube now, as much as I use and abuse the 10-minute feature on TikTok, it's growing to be a restriction in and of itself. I talk too much. And as nice as it is to have that 10-minute filming feature on TikTok, what no one tells you is that if you record in app 10 minutes worth of content, it starts to get like really glitchy and weird and annoying and frustrating and not ideal or convenient at all to go into the process of editing on that same app. It feels much easier to be recording off app, edit there, and then upload it if it's going to be a longer video, but then at that point I might as well be doing other stuff on top of what I'm doing. But I'm growing more and more fond of making longer form content, and I don't know, I feel like it's like every Gen Z child's dream one day to be a YouTuber. This is sort of my summer project. I feel like if I don't try it now, I never will. So, why am I joining BookTube? Grapie yearns to ramble, with much more freedom than she has been given. What would make my channel unique? Not much. Actually, that's a lie. Sentient object romances. I'm a really big fan of sentient object romances. Any romance that involves someone falling in love with an object that shouldn't be alive but is for some reason. I actually made a video about this a few days ago talking about the big three major categories of sentient object romances. I talked about how there's the traditional one that we have in mind where it's a human and a sentient object. So for example, if we think about the Tetris block one where it's these gigantic sentient Tetris blocks that fall out of the sky for some reason and then become integrated into everyday life. A human woman meets some of the sentient ones and then like bangs them. And that's book one in a series where that same woman goes on to encounter various internet related sentient beings. So I think the next one is about Clippy. There's also one in that series where it's like the ghost of Steve Jobs, but it's not Steve Jobs, it's like Steve Job. He inhabits an Apple Watch, but not an Apple Watch, an iWatch. But it's the ghost of Steve Jobs in an Apple Watch, and that is the one being encountered. But then we have like the next major category of sentient object romances, where for magical or scientific reasons, a sentient object has become human in order to pursue and achieve that relationship with the ideal, the pursued human partner. So we see this with the door one, Unhinged by Vera Valentine, where it is a sentient apartment door who's in love with the woman who lives inside the apartment in which it is a door for. The door is in love with her. The door also wants to protect her. The door is also a son of Zeus. We also see this with the pillow one, where that one, what is it? The feathers from a phoenix are within the pillow, and so the pillow is sentient and it also is in love with its owner and has a desire to protect her. I'm realizing that that's a trope of like sentient objects that become human or human-esque in order to protect the woman they're in love with from an outside threat. But then we also see that with the marshmallow one, with the Peeps one, mating with mallows, where it's established very briefly that these marshmallows that this woman purchased and put in the microwave that became human-esque, because they're not human. I think they're still like within their original marshmallow colors when they're human-esque. But one of the marshmallows says that they've been watching her, or the main character, for a while, waiting for her to purchase them, establishing that they were alive and desired her. Then there's category three of sentient object romances. It's pretty interesting, where it's like it's a human transforming into a sentient object, whether they began as a human or began as a sentient object and then became human or gained the ability to transform into a sentient object and can switch back and forth. We see this with the Crocs one, which is not a book you can purchase. You can only get that by joining the author's newsletter. But it does come for free when you join that newsletter, which was great for me to know. In that one, it's like a woman owns a pair of Crocs and she loves them so much, but then she loses them, and then she goes downstairs to the consignment store she owns and operates and finds two men getting freaky on one of the couches down there, and then she very soon comes to learn that those are her Crocs. In that case, it's a curse. Those two men were cursed by a homophobic wizard in like one of the men's family. So they need to engage with this woman. They also want to engage with this woman in an act to break the curse. We also see this with the fingerling potato one, but in that one it's like Omegaverse, but one of them is a fingerling potato shifter, and he has this attachment to like magical dirt where he is able to and encourages for his partner to cut him up while he is in potato form and turn him into french fries to be eaten, but then as long as a piece of him is still left within this magical dirt, he can heal. And he can go back to transforming into a person form. But in this world, it's like potato shifters are just like there, like they're normal. Honestly, my biggest gripe with that one is that the title is All He Wants for Christmas is a Fingerling, and so it establishes that this is a Christmas romance. Christmas isn't relevant to this story, like, at all. I think Christmas is referenced, like, once to give us a general idea of what time period we're working within, and it's never brought up again. And I feel like if you're gonna title your book after a holiday, the holiday needs to actually be relevant to the story. But then, like, the fourth one, because I uploaded a video about the big three, and then someone corrected me and told me that there's actually a secret fourth thing, and that's a sentient object romance that involves only sentient objects. So like the s'mores one, where it's a polyamorous romance between a graham cracker, a chocolate bar, and then the marshmallow woman, because yes, that is a woman. That's not their child. A woman, adult marshmallow, who meets these two while escaping her abusive Cheeto boyfriend. And so there's a big four that I'm most intrigued by. And the more books I read from this very niche subgenre that grows more and more every day, I grow more fascinated by it. I start to see like more trends and tropes. I think that's what I bring to Booktube. That's what I will bring to Booktube. Nothing I say will be like, I think, heard for the very first time. I think other people have made content about books like this. I definitely know that Unhinged went viral on like all platforms. But this is sort of my specialty. What am I looking forward to with this channel? Honestly, I don't know what the vibe on Booktube is. I've really enjoyed cultivating whatever community looks like to me on my corner of Booktok. So I'm curious to like expand on this community and meet new people and get new book recs and have bigger access to people to talk about books with. I'm also just looking forward to finally following through with what I said I was gonna do. But also, like I said, being able to ramble and create long form content without worrying about having to work within a very specific time limit. Why do I love reading? I don't know any other way to live, if we're being completely honest. And I think this ties into the question of when did I start reading? I genuinely cannot recall a time that I didn't know how to read. My mom tells me that I was part of like a small trio of kindergartners where we had mastered our ABCs very early and kept bothering the teacher, Mrs. McDonald, to hurry up and get on with teaching us how to read. I think I've always just been like a more advanced reader on that front at that point in time. So I've always loved reading. My mom is a really big bookworm. I think I inherited that love from her, and she definitely encouraged it very strongly. I have very fond memories of her having my sister and I decorate tote bags to be our book bags for the summer and then taking us to the local library. And so I'm just at a point where, like, in the way that Nicole Kidman comes to AMC for the magic, that's me with the Libby app, that's me with the local library, that's me with thrift books. What do I think will be the biggest challenge to overcome with pursuing this Booktube channel? Two things. Maintaining it, because here's the thing. Part of what's making it easier to start this channel now is because in the summertime I have a lot more free time. I have like a degular, mundane 9 to 5 in a world beyond the internet, beyond bookish spaces entirely, but usually leaves me like pretty tired towards the end of the day. So I'm concerned with, but also hopeful that I'll be able to maintain this once I get back to my normal 9 to 5 schedule. I also don't know how I'm going to be able to navigate just like the general space with people on here. I feel like there's a very specific energy that people on Booktok have, even like the variations of people on Booktok. There's a very specific vibe that I associate with book Twitter, and there's a very specific vibe I associate to book threads, and so I don't know what the vibe for Booktube is. I don't know if I'm gonna hate it here. I hope I don't. I like to think it's more relaxed over here, but knowing what I know about online bookish communities, there's no such thing as like a normal person in an online bookish community. Like no one's chill about anything actually. Where do I like to read? Literally everywhere. I'll read in bed, I'll read on a walk, in the car. I also will read in any format. Big fan of audiobooks, big fan of ebooks, either on an e-reader or on an app on my phone. Big fan of physical copies. Not a fan of hardcovers, but big fan of floppy paperbacks. My preferred genres. I don't have any. I think I'm a very eclectic reader. I'll read from any genre or subgenre. I'll read anything as long as it's interesting. High fantasy, low fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian, contemporary, romance, horror, thriller, mystery, weird fiction. Big fan of nonfiction more recently. Oh my god. Big fan of celebrity memoirs. Those are so... Oh my god. Some of these people have lived in ways no one could have expected. Big fan of a light-hearted read, big fan of a really formal educational read, big fan of a devastating read that's going to tear me to shreds. I read dark romance, I read rom-coms, I read Animorphs. I love Animorphs. Where's Animorphs? There's Animorphs. I have a preference for adult novels, but I love a good YA. I love a good middle grade. When I figured I'd close out this video talking about my top 10 favorite authors currently, this was a really difficult list to make, and this will change over time for sure. In no particular order, I'm a really big fan of Akwaeke Emezi. I love Akwaeke Emezi. I've yet to read a book by Akwaeke Emezi that goes below 5 stars. My personal favorites from Akwaeke Emezi are The Pet Duology and Freshwater. Pet, I would recommend to literally anyone and everyone. Freshwater, I'm I'm more selective. That's a really heavy book. That's not something that's for everyone, but it's for me. Rafael Nicolas. I adore Angels Before Man. I'm doing a reread before I get into the sequel, Angels and Man, which I have on display here. Talia Hibbert, I've read everything Talia Hibbert has ever put out. Well, not ever put out. There are a few older releases that have gone out of print that I don't have access to anymore. Operation Atonement is my great white whale. Elizabeth Acevedo, My Heart Belongs to You. I'm a big fan of novels that are written in verse in general, but I really love Acevedo's writing. She just makes me cry in a way that is ultimately always very healing. Oh my god. Octavia Butler. I think about Octavia Butler all the time. I haven't read everything by her yet, but I'm definitely getting there, and oh god, the Parable books are something else, but I really enjoy Fledgling. My introduction to her was Bloodchild, which I read in a horror writing class, and so I'm forever grateful to that professor for making that required reading to be discussed and analyzed in class. I just think Octavia Butler is so brilliant. Octavia Butler is the blueprint. And there's Ava Reed. I love Ava Reed. I still need to read A Study in Drowning, but oh my god. I love Juniper and Thorn. I love The Wolf and the Woodsman. I really appreciate and enjoy just how haunting and dark and rich Ava Reed's writing is. I also really love Aiden Thomas. Aiden Thomas writes YA books that are really, really healing to a young, closeted Grapie in high school. I also think my sense of humor lines up with Aiden Thomas's very well. I've been able to interview Aiden Thomas a couple of times on live, which I have uploaded here. I just love Aiden. Me and Aiden go like this. At least in my head we do. Adriana Herrera, oh my god, that's the woman who got me into historical romances. A Caribbean Heiress in Paris means the world to me. And also, I just wrapped up participating in a friend of mine's podcast, Reformed Rakes. It's a historical romance podcast. And my friend Chels helped start it up. And I love Chels. If you don't know who Chels is, you need to know who Chels is. And you need to know this podcast. And you need to know Chels on TikTok. It's like at Chels_ebooks. Chels approaches content as sort of like video essays, and so does one of my other mutuals, Sanjana at Baskin Sons. Just listening to them speak in their videos and their in-depth analysis, I can like feel all of the brain cells multiplying and being nourished. But on this podcast that I just wrapped up like literally a couple hours ago, we talked about A Caribbean Heiress in Paris and how brilliant and wonderful and beautiful it is. So a really big fan of Tasha Suri. I love the Jasmine Throne. I need to get caught up. I know book 3 is coming out soon, like unsettlingly soon. But I have read book 1 and I do need to get caught up with book 2. But I really love her books of Amba duology. Oh my god. Oh my god! Empire of Sand. I think about it quite literally at least 3 times a day and howl at the moon over it. She's just so good. Tasha Suri is just so good. And then this final spot I'm going to give to Peter Jelly Clark. I have yet to read something by him that wasn't unspeakably fantastic and otherworldly in its brilliance. I think he's able to do so much with such a small page count in a way that I've truly never been able to like see be done by anyone else before. I love Ring Shout. I think about Ring Shout all the time. I think it's just brilliant. I think Peter Jelly Clark is brilliant. I think his brain needs to be studied because of just how endlessly creative and masterful he is. I think that's a solid top 10 as an introduction. I really do talk about everything and anything on here, though. By on here, I mean like the general internet void in which I yell nonsense out to. I don't really know how to close out this video. Stay if you want, please. You're not obligated to. If you have recommendations for your favorite booktubers and your favorite content creators, I'd love some. I'd love to get more involved and more knowledgeable about Booktube as its own space, as its own entity, because I really do think that this is the platform, this is the space that I have the least amount of history and experience with. I don't know why I haven't been able to get into Booktube until more recently. Feel free to be messy and tell me who you think I should avoid and why. I love being in people's business. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really do hate this angle. I'm not used to filming with the camera being sideways like this. I feel like you can see too much. Just in general, you can see too much. But also, fingers crossed, I actually stick with this. Whoa. Okay, bye.